Let's see if it turns red, and I should see a little, yeah, recording. Okay,
Oh.
that is done. Presenter, would you like to present? Yes.
I think doing it to cloud may be what you wanted to do. Then you could send a link around rather than having to deal with the file on your end, unless you want
Okay.
to put it on Google Drive or something.
I don't subscribe to any clouds or drives, so I think it's probably easier.
It's the Zoom cloud.
Oh, okay. And then it would, what, download or give you a link or something?
I think it gives you a link.
Okay.
I could be wrong, so
Let's do it this way. I just know that it's safer for me if it just becomes something on my computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a presentation, Shop Tales, tonight. Are you ready for that? Is our presenter here? Did anybody remember from my email? My memory is really,
David,
81.
David Kruh was supposed to be our presenter this evening.
That's it. Thank you, David Kruh. David, are you here? I don't see you. Let's then just go down the list here. I guess Hugh would be the first person that I see on the list on the right side here. Hugh, would you like to talk to us a little bit and tell us what you've been up to?
Sure. Hugh Vartanian. I recently retired from full time, so it's a little bit difficult to tell the difference between COVID isolation and not working, but there you go. So a bunch of house projects. I mean, I'm a guy with too many hobbies. Radio-wise, I've got a couple of old Telefunkens and some tube equipment, this and that, and dabble in test equipment, keyboards, and Dixie tube things, whatever. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you. Okay, let me turn it over to Paul, if you would like to tell us what you've been up to.
Well, let's see here. I'm just trying to bring back the meeting. I went off to check an email. Dick Schulte apparently is also setting up a Zoom meeting for us.
Oh.
And I think David may be presenting or trying to present over there. So if you want to pass me by, I can shoot Dick an email and tell him we have one rolling and see if David could check his inbox for an updated invitation from you, Tom.
Okay, would you do that? And
Will do. I'll be back.
Thank you. I was afraid that was going to happen. So
Dick an email that asked if we were on. We had no phone number, NEVEC, so I sent him an email CC'd to you, Tom, and said, "Are we on?" And I didn't. He must have come in after you did.
Thanks, Bruce. I haven't checked my email, so I don't know what's happening. I just figured somebody better start this thing. Jay Snow, do you want to take over for a little while?
Sure. Now that I've seen Bruce on there, I think that there were more knowledgeable people than I was about this last week. This is a 205D. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but I did have one. It's a Western Electric. From what little I remember being told about it when it was given to me, it can be, well, I guess like any transistor or any tube, it can be anything. It could be an RF amp, it could be an oscillator, it could be an audio amp. It all depends on what circuitry you put around it. But after last week's meeting, I was reminded that I had one somewhere, so I went and looked for it.
Look at the base configuration on that, John.
I'm sorry?
Did you look at the base configuration on
that?
that?
Four pins, 2 filament, 2 plate.
Look at where the pin is for centering that on the side.
Yep.
It's across from one of the pins instead of
right.
So that your 2 filament pins are in the back. That was one of Westric's. This is the way we do things, and that's the way it's going to stay.
Okay. I was wondering what that little bump was on the side.
Well, that locks it down into a socket, but it wouldn't work in a standard socket like an 01A or something like that. But your 205 is a pretty highly collected amplifier tube in the world. People like that a lot. And it's actually the upgrade of the VT2, which was
Okay.
only used prior to World War I or during the war.
Okay, great, thank you. The other thing that I had is kind of a little thing. I don't know how well this will show up, but I will hold it up. This is the Gabriel Magic Phonograph. This is for children to be able to play records without ruining them. And it's kind of like the Bing Crosby model of the 78 RPMs, only this one does 45 7-inchers. And essentially what the little kids do is just push their record in, and then it just starts to play. I have very weak batteries in it right now because I was playing with it today to make sure that it worked. So it's got very low volume and it's kind of off speed right now. But the good news is, for this funny little toy, this record that came with it is actually the not for resale demonstration record for the Magic Phono itself. So maybe in a subsequent week, when I didn't want to hack it up too much, but I would like to modify it and just run it off of a 9-volt DC wall wart, because it basically takes 6 of the large D-cell batteries, and it doesn't play for very long with them. But it was kind of a cool thing, and I thought it was neat that, a little kid wouldn't want to play with a tone arm and a record and a needle and wreck the needle or scratch the record. So it was more like a floppy drive before there were any floppy drives.
Thanks very much. Paul, did you get, I'm trying to email these people too and get them in.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm on it. I heard from Dick and he just said, well, that's good. And I don't know if he's going to try to join us. He didn't answer me. I asked him if David was with his meeting. So now I'm emailing David real quick and just try to find out, if what's his status here. So as soon as I hear back, I'm typing while you guys are talking.
Yeah, I see an email from David that says, have you started the meeting yet? I'm hoping
All right.
he'll figure it out.
I told him that you had sent the invite, so hopefully
Okay.
he'll go back and check his email.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Let me see. We've got a phone number here if you would like to talk to us, ending in 9172.
Yes, hello, Tom.
Oh, hi.
It's
Hi.
W1RC.
Excellent. Mr. Mike, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Do you don't have a camera, I take it?
No, I'm not set up for that.
Okay, we'll make sure you do soon. Just hang in, we'll get over to you in a little while. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the group? I mentioned that I was going to invite you, first of all, and secondly, that we would like to share possible plans that we have for a Zoom Fest, since we can't have our usual wonderful meeting, outdoor-indoor meeting, and thought
Yes,
you'd be interested. And also let us know, maybe now, whether you have any plans or any ideas about Deerfield and Nearfest. Go ahead.
Well, obviously, we're not going to be having Nearfest 27, because if we were, we would be there right now setting up the grounds. So we're all sort of hanging out here, but we are going ahead full steam with plans for Nearfest 28, which will take place on the 16th and 17th of October. We will sell tickets in advance because our treasury obviously is somewhat depleted. We're going to be offering the tickets for sale at Ham Radio Outlet in Salem, New Hampshire, and also by mail order. The main advantage to buying a ticket in advance is going to be a savings, because obviously we have to increase the cost at the gate from $10 to $15. But if you buy your ticket in advance, you will still be able to pay the $10 rate. So we will keep you folks posted to this, but start checking our website into May, and you'll get all the details on how and where to get your tickets. I'd like to add that in the event you buy your ticket early, and we encourage you to do it, and for any reason, if the Hamfest in the fall is canceled, the tickets will be good at the next Nearfest. So really what you're doing is buying a future ticket for Nearfest to help us build up our treasury.
Still the best bargain in the Northeast, Mike. We all know that, and we're all nodding our head. Can you see us or not?
No, I can't see you. I'm just sitting here on the phone and hanging out and looking at some stuff here that I want to put on eBay because I'm lightening the load quite substantially these days, and there's lots of stuff that has to go. I find, amazingly enough, people are spending money on eBay quite freely these days. You would think that given the situation, people would be tending to be a little bit more frugal, but no, they're buying stuff, and that's okay with me.
It's okay with me too. That's good. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your coming and joining us, and maybe we can find a webcam for you somewhere in the junk pile, and we can see you and you can see us and so on, but appreciate that. Let me see, David Kruh, you've just joined us happily, and sorry about the confusion there. Dick had some kind of an issue, and I'm running this thing and trying to run it and doing the best I can. So at this point, are you ready to talk to us about Shop Tales, David?
Yeah, let me just get my PowerPoint up and running, and let's see if I can share it successfully with you. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to share my screen, and
coming up.
Is it working?
Yeah, I see it. Yes, excellent.
No kidding. Wow.
That's a shop.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, guys. So a little background. First of all, it's great to see everybody, if only virtually. I work at a company called Analog Devices. Some of you with software-defined radios might even have some of our processors in your rigs. And I've been writing these blogs for our Engineer Zone site. Some of them have been about my ham radio hobby, and others have been about my antique radio hobby. And one of my colleagues, who's also a ham and is at another club, said, "Hey, would you like to give a talk?" And I said, "Okay, I'll put one together." So I never got a chance to deliver it to his club because this whole coronavirus thing happened. So lucky you get to be my guinea pigs, my world premiere for this. So I put together some stories that are based on some of the blogs that I've written, and they'll come from the shop. And I just wanted to show you that it's, with one exception, it's a very analog site. There's my RCA 5T. It's on the bench. I'm about to do some aligning for it. I've got my ICO 324 signal generator. I have what I believe was the first oscilloscope that Heathkit ever saw. And there's a good old Simpsons analog meter, and there's my one digital piece of equipment. It's a frequency counter, just to make sure that the ICO is being honest with me. So I like to say that, and some of you are going to laugh and call me a rookie. I've maybe worked on 120 to 135 radios in my career, my hobby, and I've never met my white whale. I've always managed to get even the most dilapidated, broken down, amazing, twisted piece of metal somehow to work and start receiving radio. But it's not because I'm that smart, it's because I'm not afraid to ask questions. And there's a lot of bad things about the internet, but one of the great things are sites like these, the Antique Radio Forum, and there are several terrific Facebook pages, and guys get on. Many of you I know are members of these sites, and we share information because, as I found, no matter how bizarre the problems that you have, it's likely that someone else has had them before. And so that's where some of these stories came from, these really weird or different, to me, they were different things that suddenly popped up. The first one comes around because of an All-American 5, but a very interesting type of All-American 5. Of course, we all know that our older model radios, the ones that were around when we first went from batteries to AC, they had those big honking transformers. That's what partly what made that thing so heavy. And those big transformers performed several functions. I think the most important was that it isolated the AC from the chassis. It kept us safe when we were touching the chassis. It also often had a little tap, around 6.3 volts, and the filaments for the radio were all powered from that tap. In the transformerless All-American 5, developed in the later 1930s as manufacturers started to figure out cheaper ways to make the radio, they developed this way of, instead of an input transformer, they put the filaments in series, and as we know, you total up the voltage drops across those filaments, and it comes close to equaling the input voltage, and everything is fine except for the fact that they grounded one side of the, somebody's, by the way, if you could all kind of mute your mics so
David,
you could all hear me.
David, can I
Yes?
stop you for just a second?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to mute everybody. And do you
Okay.
know how to unmute yourself?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Can you see the unmute button?
Okay, well, I've got to escape.
Lower left.
Oops.
You have to allow people to unmute when you do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to unmute him.
Okay. I'll try and unmute him. David, I'm going to mute you. We have
Okay. I think I
a
can see how
noise
to do that.
coming in.
Okay.
Probably. Stand by.
Okay. You bet.
Okay, you can unmute.
You should be able to hear me now. Can everybody
Good.
just nod your heads? Excellent. Okay. All right. So, the lesson I learned when I worked on my very first radio, which happened to be an All-American 5, is that they grounded one side of the AC. And as we know, if you wire that, if you put in a new power cord and you wire that switch incorrectly and you reach around the back of the radio, you know what happens. You get a nice little zap of voltage there. So to mitigate that, some manufacturers added a little RC circuit. Some of them put in a little LRC circuit. And now we come to the radio that we're going to talk about tonight. It's the Emerson 409. Many of you know it. Its more valuable cousin, the Mickey Mouse playing the bass fiddle. This is its less famous cousin, but it's still kind of a neat little radio and very ornate on the outside. Inside, I found 4 tubes, which I guess makes it an All-American 4. And here's the schematic of the power supply. And it turns out that there are the filaments and they're all in series. It did have an electromagnet speaker. So it did have a nice active pi filter. But those 4 filaments were each only 6.3 volts, which only equals 25 volts, which means we have to drop another 95 volts and do so at about 300 mils. That's the draw of the tubes. So we're looking at 30 watts that have to be, and 95 volts that have to be dropped at that resistor. Now, of course, it's not a resistor. It is a resistance line cord. Now, theoretically, it's not a bad idea. You got 30 watts of power, heat being generated. Why not spread it out over 6 feet? And that way you gently dissipate the heat over a long distance. But the story, mostly apocryphal, goes like this. Judy Homemaker in the late 1930s, she's fixing up the home and she sees the power cord. Oh, that husband of mine, he's leaving his power cords. I'm going to bundle it up, roll it up, and stick it behind the curtain. And all that heat generated from that coiled up wire eventually causes the curtains to burst into flames, leading to the phrase curtain burner. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have one of those newspaper search tools. I I did a lot of research. I tried to find, never mind the fact that I couldn't find any deaths, thank goodness. I couldn't find any written account of a curtain actually burning because somebody wrapped the coil up behind there. But the name stuck, probably more so because 80 years later, as we go to antique flea markets and Brimfields and things like that, and oh, hey, I pick up this radio and I see this rat's nest of a coil coming out from behind it. And that's when I first learned about what a resistance line cord is and what it does and how to replace it. So I went to my old friend Google, did some searching, and I found two terrific articles. And later on, I will give you a web address. And if you're not familiar with these sites, I'd be more than happy to share these URLs. One was a fellow named Greg Farmer. He's on one of those Facebook groups that I mentioned. And he goes step by step into the story of the resistance line cord and his recommendations for replacement. Then this British fellow, Paul Stenning, does a step-by-step explanation of each of the 3 ways that one can replace a resistor line cord. And I'm going to go through them now. Now, I list the 4th one because there are brave souls out there who would actually find a new old stock resistor cord. I wouldn't even put a new stock cord in there. I just think it's, as I say, it was an interesting idea in theory, but I think in practice we need to go with a more reliable, less dangerous route. And there are 3 options. We could use a simple resistor. It's easy to calculate. I've kind of already done that. And it's very easy to install. The problem is it's a big resistor and it's going to generate a lot of heat. And especially in the Emerson 409, which I'm looking at right now up on my shelf here in the study, it's a pretty small radio and I wouldn't like that much heat building up in it. You could stick a diode in the circuit that would drop your cycle by 1/2, and that reduces the size of the resistor both by ohmage and by wattage, but it still produces a lot of heat. The option that I went for is called the capacitive dropper, runs with a lot less heat. And but the problem is it needs a couple of more resistors, but they're not really high wattage. And it just takes a lot of math to figure it out. And I was also stuck in Paul Stenning's site. He walks you through step by step all of the calculations you need to figure out what your resistor, your capacitor, your surge resistor are going to be. And then I looked at the example that he was using for his radio, and damned if it wasn't the Emerson 409, the exact radio that I was working on. Paul, God bless his pointy little head, he created an Excel spreadsheet, which all you have to do is enter in the values of your radio. You see, he's even set it up so whether you're in England on their service or here in America, it will give you the answer. So I didn't even need to do the math. So here are the answers. I could go with about a 300 ohm resistor and about 30 watts, or I could use the diode and drop her down to about 18 watts, 200 ohm resistor, or build what is really a pretty simple circuit, about a 7 microfarad dropper capacitor, 33 ohm surge limit resistor, and at 3 watts. And then 100K 1 watt discharge resistor, and we're all set. And this is what the final circuit looks like. You still need 3 lines, 3 wires, because you're still feeding AC directly to the plate, but there's our circuit. Now the question is, where do you put all this circuitry? And now we come to the great debate. And I'm not, there's so much rancor around these days, but within our little circle, our little community, nothing stirs up a good debate like asking the question, how, when you restore radio, do you replace the components inside? Because I know there are some of you who will stuff capacitors, you'll stuff not just the cans, but even the smaller capacitors, because when you look underneath the chassis, you want it to look the way it did. Personally, you know, I think this is kind of neat, and I've seen photos of the results of some of the work. I am very circumspect about how much the outside of the radio, and I do the recap, and of course replace out of spec resistors and valve controls and things like that. But I'm just not willing to go this far. Greg Former, he came out with a little circuit in his website in which he comes up with a way to stuff a Bakelite socket, a 4-pin Bakelite socket. And that looked kind of neat. But again, I just didn't like how tightly packed this little radio was. And with those 4 tubes in that small case, what I did was I took a wall wart and I cracked it open and I emptied out the insides, and I just put all my components inside the wall wart. And I also, there's actually a fuse that you can't see behind the surge limit resistor, just to add a little bit of safety to it. And that's how I run the radio, which sounds brilliant. And now I don't have to worry about my curtains burning or my radio overheating. So I'll stop and see if there's any questions. I have one other thing to show you, and then if you like this, if you like, I can come back. I've got 2 more different stories that I can tell you, but I've got 1 more for tonight. Anybody want to weigh in on anything I've said just now?
You're all unmuted. That's fabulous, fabulous, Hugh. I always wondered how to do that. I think I half-assed it by just trying different capacitors until it came out with a voltage that was nearby, and probably did a lot of damage along the way. That was magnificent presentation. Anyone else?
So
I had
David,
stumbled on that. Oh, go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to say, David, how does it pick up WJIB?
You just mentioned my test station. I'm only 12 miles north of Cambridge. That's my go-to station.
And the wall wart was a genius type idea. I like that. A little modern twist on the whole thing. Very nice.
I just wanted to get all that heat out of the radio.
Good idea.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thanks for your work on that, because I went to that same website and I think I read, you must have posted something about the wall wart. If it wasn't you as the initial person, somebody had done the wall wart thing on that same website with the math being done for me. And I just recently did that for one of my old radios as well.
Which radio did you do that for?
You know, I wish I could remember.
Okay.
I can't remember them all. I sold it at the last event that we had.
Oh, okay.
So it's out of the house and it's out of my memory, but it was the same kind of thing. It was it had the original cord on it, and it actually worked with the original cord.
You plugged it in?
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay.
What could possibly go wrong?
Just yeah, sure. Okay.
And,
Well, thank you.
it worked, but then I did want to go through the exercise, and so I left. It looked like it was an asbestos-covered third, like white coated wire that was inside the power cord. So I left it in there. I just disconnected it from its other end so that it wasn't dissipating the power, and did the fix on it. So it's the originality is preserved if somebody wanted to reconnect it, but I wanted to go through that exercise. I was a little dismayed when the radio I was working on was not the one used as an example. So I had to, my computer wouldn't run the Excel spreadsheet, so I had to do it out by hand.
Oh, okay. Well, again, he gave the spreadsheet, so that was my backup. Again, when I saw all that math, I'm like, oh, okay. Take out the calculator and get ready to tuck in.
Yeah,
right,
that antique radio website is a great resource. There are also 2 other ones. There's one that's called Audio Karma and another one that's called Video Karma. So if you're working on an amplifier, like for a vacuum tube stereo, or if you're working on restoring a television set, you can get a lot of great help on those 2 sites as well.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. You should share that on the group page. You know,
Okay. Yeah, the smartest person in the room is the one with a good internet connection.
I like that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that.
With a second computer.
That's wonderful, David. Thank you very, very much for doing that. We are running a little bit late thanks to our
Okay.
mix-up here, so I do hope you'll join us and bring
Please,
another
anytime.
presentation.
I got 3 more stories for you guys whenever you want.
I'm looking forward
And,
to every one of them.
Oh, thank you.
Are your blogs up on the Analog Devices website?
Yes, they are.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I was getting analog dialogue for quite a while.
Okay. Well, it's Engineer Zone.
Okay.
So just go on there and it's all the engineering mind. There's stories about the radios. One of my heroes, Tom Edison. You'll see lots of stories about him and how he first came to Boston. So have fun and please leave comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you,
great.
David.
Right. I'm going to mute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let me run down the list then. Arthur, do you want to say anything to the group?
No, I just have a quick question, I guess. At my building, and where the shop is completely torn apart now. And my main working space, I had 2 benches spaced apart by probably 3 feet or so. Each of them was about 8 feet long. One of them 37 wide with some shelves over it where I had test equipment, equipment. I'm getting ready to move that part of my operation to a different room. And the desks and the tables that I have there now are from the founding of that building 65 years ago, where my father moved from his original location. And I'm interested in whether, I don't want to use the old junk. So I'm kind of looking for ideas on how to set up some new benches, new workspace, I guess, for myself. And I don't know if anybody has any references to something like that. I've gone out looking for benches, and there are a lot of companies that sell a lot of fancy stuff. Some of it's quite expensive, but I'm just looking for something fairly simple, probably a couple of 8 foot long, 30 or so inch deep benches. The contractor who's in there right now, if I had something to show him, I'm sure that I could get him to build them for me. But if anybody has any references to something like that'd be helpful.
Okay, Arthur, thank you very much. I'm going to run down the list, but the list seems to be changing. So if I miss you or have already called on you, please forgive me. Hugh, have you, do you want to say anything further?
I don't know. I mean, I'm down in my shop in the basement. I was going to hold the computer up and turn it around. I don't know if you can, I got HP LCR meter there and a little triple output power supply. I've been working on my house. That's an LED strip. That's actually going to get mounted in my shower, and I have hooked up a Zigbee controller so I could tell Alexa to turn on the light in the shower and set the color. And then I don't know, lights are off over here, but one of the Telefunkens I was talking about's on the table there. That I've had for many years. I love the grill cloth, and I'm gonna make it go. I'm a little freaked out about the whole mica capacitor and the IF transformer thing, but whatever.
That looks like an operette.
Sorry?
Is that an operette?
Yes.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Nice radio.
Yeah, it's cool. And I have another one also that's bigger that I got recently, but that's another room. I forget I'll go look at the model in a minute, but. And then there's a Hallicrafter's shortwave and a National shortwave on the table there. The yard sale acquisitions figured go, and pilot test equipment, some oscilloscopes I got from a test equipment house. So there we go. All right. There's the rest of the room. Bunch of Simpson meters on the shelf, the rectangular ones, and I'll pass now because time is short. All right, thank you. That was a great presentation. I enjoyed that. I'm going to go look up the diode thing. And the problem with the diode thing also, it's a lot of noise putting the halfway rectification into the radio, I suppose, unless you just run the filaments off of it. But I anticipate the rest of the radio is meant to run on the lower voltage as well. So anyway, I like good idea with a capacitor. Thanks.
Thank you, Hugh. I appreciate your comments. I'm in real trouble here because people are joining and leaving, and my list is going completely to pieces here. So I'm just going to run down the list. Let me see. The next person, John Gibbons. Would you like to say anything, show anything?
Well, I'll do a quick show and tell if we can see. It's my relatively small portable radio. Haha. So I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to hold it up. This here is a Telefunken hi-fi. It's an Elite. Now it's really based on the Bajazzo. This is from like 1955, and this is one of the smallest radios I have, at least for Telefunkens. And bless the German souls, this is a portable radio, but you know you can it's like lifting weights if you carry it around. But I bought this about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's actually in fully operational condition. And the neat thing, let's see if I can try and hold this up a little bit better, it is actually AC/DC. It is battery operated. I guess it recently had a NiCad battery. But the batteries I guess when it was restored, I don't know if it's really operational wise. So I just used it on AC anyway. The neat thing about this, it has retractable antennas. So I can pull the antenna out. In fact, I'll just do it on one side. It's like a tape measure. Yeah. It goes out on both sides, like a TV antenna. So, and it'll lock in place. And then when you need to retract it, there's a little button in the back, and it just goes back to its normal position. It also has a very nicely done cover, so you can pull the cover out and then just simply close it up to protect the front. Now, what's interesting is, see, when Telefunken was imported in the United States, they were imported through a company called American Elite, located in New York City in Manhattan. And in fact, my introduction to Telefunken was, I'm originally from Long Island as well. So I know John in Long Island. I'm now John outside of Boston, but I used to live in Long Island. And when my parents married, they moved to Levittown. They were working in Levittown and moved to Wantagh. And nearby was a shop called Willig's, which was a radio TV shop, and he sold all German equipment. So my parents' first radio was a Telefunken Gabota 7 Export, which is a nice mid-sized radio. In fact, I have one. I'll show that in another show and tell sometime. And in fact, I'll do is I can flip the back open, but I'll quick finish my story. So my father became very enamored with them, and American Elite had Telefunken make specific models for them. So, for example, the Bajazzo sold in Europe became the Elite and the Hi-Fi. Now, this one is a Hi-Fi because it has a push-pull output. The Elite did not. So this is actually the top end. In fact, you can tell, if you can see, there's the badge right here. It says Hi-Fi, nicely done, and nicely done by the Germans. I'll flip it around just to show what the inside looks like. Whoops, pardon me just 1 second, gentlemen. I just pop up it has a little catch button. There we go. So I can give you a look-see in the inside. All nicely and nice and tidy. So let's see if can people see this?
Yes.
Yes, that's okay. So this radio works extremely well. However, more recently, it started to develop a hum. It sounds like maybe a filter cap is maybe on its way out, even though this was restored some time ago. But in fact, if you can see, I'll show this right item here. This is where the battery pack would go. Here is if you have a turntable, you can wire your turntable in and have it play your record player outside, through your radio. One thing the Germans always did is they almost always, in every radio, no matter the model, you always had a phono or some sort of auxiliary input. And this one has it. I've never tried it, however, but it does have the plug. But what's interesting though is American Elite had some custom radios made, made for them. So anything with the name Elite was made for America. And this one is an example. So it has, for example, the full FM spectrum. So it goes up to 108 megahertz. And they displaced one of the shortwave bands for AM, as well as like there's a marine band, which, I get nothing on that. But otherwise, it's very hard finding these in decent condition. And this one's in really quite fine shape. And I wanted to just do a little bit of cosmetic cleanup on it. But I guess the only thing I dread is ripping out the contents, because the Germans did a lot of stuff in a small area, and to try to get the chassis out, I'm sure will prove a challenge, for a little bit. But that's quite all right. That's quite all right. I look forward to trying and tackling it when I can. But it works fine, other than a little bit of an annoying hum. But at any rate, yeah. So I think I'll just leave it at that. And I don't know if you could see that, but it was just a little taste of some of the neat toys are out there.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for doing that. Let me turn it over to Bruce Burgess. How are you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing fine. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Good. Well, I have nothing to show tonight, but we had a big windstorm here today, and I lost lost a major tree in the yard, and it tore down some of my dipoles. So tomorrow I've got my hands full. Meanwhile, I've got a yard full of debris with a giant silver maple. So that's my story for the day. Back to net.
Okay, let me turn it over to Bruce Phillips. Take it away.
I'll pass right now. I'd rather use time to talk about Zoom Fest, or about the fact that we all need to go out there and send in a ballot for officers. So any of that I do. I'll talk about tubes next time, or out in the future somewhere.
Okay, you're going to send out emails to us on those topics?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I will if that's, everybody everybody got a copy of Raven, I assume, and in there's a ballot, and in there your president tells you he's not going to be president as of January, so we all need to be thinking about who's a potential person for president. And I'm not sure where the other officers stand on whether they're going to run for office next year or whether they're not. So that's the first one I'd say, and I'd be blunt and say it's not Bruce Phillips's responsibility. The second one I'd say is about Zoom Fest. If people want to try that, if they do, we probably need to talk a little bit more about that. And if not, I don't have anything else to say, and you can go to the next person.
Thanks, Bruce. I would like to chat about Zoom Fest for a couple of minutes here. It could be done quite simply, I think, just the way we're doing it. Go down the list. Of course, I can't see the list here. We have to have a list of people. It would be easiest if people would send an email with their name on it. We put them on a list. We go down, ask them what they have to either sell or show or give away, just straight down the list. And I don't think that would take the 4 hours. I was scared thinking that I'd have to try and run this thing for 4 hours. That's beyond my capabilities. But anybody have an input on that? We would like to keep our record of never having canceled a meet. And a simple way to do it would be just simply run down the list, take sales off. A person will have to bring a big sign with their email and their telephone number on it, hold it up when they're done so people can contact them off the reflector, off the Zoom meeting, and just run down that list until we run out of people. Would that work for people? Bruce, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is that sounds great. I mean, my theory was a maximum of 5 minutes per person. And If you do that, so far I think this is the biggest we've had is 21 people here. But the other thing you have to remember is this only goes out to people who are on our IO group, which is about a third of our members. So 2/3 of your members right now know there's nothing happening at Brookline, but they have no awareness of the word Zoom Fest right now. So if we decide to do it, we need to get information out to everybody. And that's not hard. I mean, we have the email addresses of at least 92 or 95% of the members, so it's not hard. I didn't want to do anything until everybody agreed they thought that was a good idea. I put that out on the IO the other day, and I did not hear anything from the president or either vice presidents. So I've backed off for a minute until I hear something from those people. I just want to hear them say it's okay, it's not okay, or we don't care. But again, I'm an ex-vice president. I did a long time, and I'm not trying to run things. I'll help. I always will. So, I mean, if it's a go, we can send I'll even do it. I'll send an email out to all the members who have an email address with us, tell them about it. I prefer that if they're going to try to do it, they try to come to your Zoom next week at least to see what that's like, because you don't want 70 or 50 or 60 new people coming in on Zoom who've never tried it out. If they don't have a camera, it's not going to be easy for them, because they're the ones that are supposed to be saying, showing something that says, here's my email address or here's my phone to contact me with. Now, somebody could certainly listen, but they're not going to see whatever somebody's holding up in front of them. So that's, I'd probably put some of that into an email. So I'm more interested in what other people think rather than what I think. And the number one question is, who's going to run a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, I can arrange to set up the meeting, but I'd really rather not run it because I'm slow and I can't keep track of the names and everything. There was someone else who was pretty conversant with Zoom. George, would you consider hosting that?
Let me think on that part.
Okay.
I had a couple of ideas though. Given that the timing would be kind of short, first of all, I think Bruce's idea of sending out the email is great. I think we'd also decide to put something up on the website, because you already got something there about the meeting, what's going to happen. That would be another place to be able to provide a notice. I'd suggest also that anyone that wants to have something to offer to sell, either puts it into the group IO, or we come up with a way where you use ID what you want, how much the price is, your name, your phone number, all of that kind of information. And then that list could be put together and given out to people, and just use the time on Zoom to answer people's questions, or if they want to see something about it. You might be able to still do most of your work offline, use the Zoom time for your the physical showing of ideas. So that was just a possibility.
Great idea. So that sounds like it would work. Other people have ideas, thoughts?
I mean, George had some good ideas. I would also offer that, maybe some parameters, for people who are used to doing more of a traditional ham fest, maybe a limit on, you have one item or two items, you have so much time, some tables are bigger than others, as you know, and you have somebody with a lot of wind power behind them in a big table, well, it becomes, a sales event for them. So I think the goal is to keep the string unbroken and to give it a test. So along with George's idea, you pick a item or an item and go with that.
I think that makes a lot of sense to have people register in advance. That would make
Yes.
this job that I'm trying to do of keeping track of a list of people off a constantly changing list on my screen a lot easier.
Many of the internet auction companies who do the online auctions of estates or, close out estates, do the sales, will publish a preview, a photo. It's very, very advanced for where we are. But the idea might be just to give people a little idea as to what's out there. If you're looking for certain such and such, you don't see it, well, you probably wouldn't want to participate. But the preview is a nice idea, so they come in, they have an idea, and it's not, rubbing a chin and think, it makes it a little bit more of a speeds up the auction, so to speak, for the auctioneer. Because the Zoom master is really sort of an auctioneer in that case.
Bruce, what's our target date? 16 May, is that right? I forgot.
Well, that was the date of the original show, right? I mean, again, this isn't up to me, Tom. I'm not an officer of this group.
No,
So,
I just forgot what the day was.
My theory was, you can wait 2 months, you can wait 3 months. My personal belief is it will make a 10% difference if you do it in 2 weeks. So my question to George and the rest of the group are, I personally would have just sent this out to NEVAC members. I mean, I have the email addresses of 300 non-NEVAC members too. But the question is, once you open that up, or once you post it on the website, you're opening it up to everybody in the world.
Yep.
Which all it takes is one rotten apple out there to make a lousy time for everybody. And there are people that are pretty bored right now. So the question is, if you really want to open it that far.
Maybe this is something. Maybe this is something that has a, some of the details get worked out. Maybe there's a separate Zoom meeting to discuss the Zoom Fest.
Yeah.
Because there seems to be quite a bit to this, a lot of content to the topic.
Well, the other thing that is kind of a question to me in my own mind, because I don't know enough about the scalability of Zoom. Like, if you hit some limit, let's say I'll pick a number, is it 50, where things start becoming, less reliable? I don't know what the experience is like if you have a lot of people try to come on.
I like the
idea.
Yeah, I understand.
Just the scaling thing. I think it's a great idea personally, just to have the continuity, and even if it were, even for 2 hours, it would still probably be worth it.
Does anyone have any experience in a large Zoom meeting, 50, 75, 100? 100 is the limit, and I'm running a meeting on Sunday of all the telegraph key collectors, and there are about 800 of them, and the limit is 100, so they're going to get a message, meeting full, when it hits 100. But the thought of 100 collectors, and I have to run down that list, and I don't even know what the list is very, very scary. But I'm going to try it, and at least I'll have something to report next week if I am not in a hospital by that time. Oh, I better not say that in our current state. Anybody else have comments on the fest? I think that if one person would consider putting together an outline, I put together a very rough one, send it out. If someone would tweak that a little bit and put out a little tighter idea, we can get started on it. I'd love to see it happen in 2 weeks. I don't see why it couldn't. And I don't think we have to open it up to tremendous number of people the first time. After all, it wouldn't have happened at all if it wasn't for us coming up with this idea. So that's my 2 bits. Let me
Here's
turn it
my
over.
2 bits, Tom. If you're willing to set the meeting up and make it available out there, I'll put together some form of outline, and I will send out an email to all the club members only.
That's great. And George,
at
would
the
you?
same time, go ahead, Dr. George.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wish I
Go
could
ahead,
hear
Bruce.
that.
I said, go ahead, say what you were going to say to George.
Oh, I'm sorry. George, would you consider hosting the thing, being the MC or the net control? You're going to think about that. I'm sorry. I was going to
think about it. I'll get back to you on that, Tom.
Okay.
George,
Anybody else? Anybody else
if-
who would be
If
comfortable
George
with?
decides he'll host it, that's wonderful. If George says, I'd rather pass, I'll host it. As long as you've set up the meeting and you're controlling the people coming in and out. I'll set something up in advance so we know in advance when people would like to do something and try to set some ground. I will put something together by the end of the weekend and send it out to as many people. Well, if you can tell me who's in this meeting right here, I will send it out to them first so they can kick the tires on it, okay?
Somebody do a screenshot for us, please. Can someone do that? Get a picture of everyone in the meeting. I can't write them down, but if somebody could just take a screenshot, then we know who to tell Bruce to send it out to. Nod your head if you can do a screenshot for us.
I just tried one.
Thank you. I'll try and do one also, just for the heck of it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Zoom is one of these, the more you know, the more you don't know things. It has this whole concept of co-hosts, so you can invite people, depending on the paradigm, you come up with a meeting, for the meet, to divide responsibility a little bit. So
there are also apparently the capability of sub meetings, but I don't know how to do that.
I just, one philosophy thing about it, I think about a fest where you've got 100 tables and 100 people or 200 people wandering around. That's a lot of parallel, interface time, right, between tables and stuff on them and people. So this concept turns it around a little bit, so it's one table with everyone looking at it at the same time.
Yeah, it's the difference between parallel processing and serial processing. I think we're stuck with a serial presentation unless we break into subgroups, in my opinion.
But I was going to say, having a posting site, and it starts to look like a classified thing, but for people to post, the people that are going to be displaying, to post pictures, so we could go around beforehand and kind of scan the tables, and then when someone comes up, or something.
Well, from my perspective, that's available to anyone at any time on our IO group.
Right.
I set it in the first place. So anyone, and like I say, I'll send out an email, after you guys see it, so that people see it hopefully close to 2 weeks in advance.
Right.
And, the goal isn't for one guy to show 100 things he's got for sale, because I'll just take you out to the garage and suck up 4 hours. But, it's for as many people as possible, whether they're a buyer or a seller. I mean, if there's somebody, if George is looking for a particular radio, I think it's a great place to do it. And if, somebody else is looking to sell some pieces, but I in my mind, I would limit them to showing 5 pieces. I mean, they can show a table worth if they want, but I'd probably still be looking for some kind of timekeeper that says, the best you get's 5 minutes. What you want to do with it?
Yeah.
Totally up to you.
So just throw out a draft outline for us and we'll all give you some input on it and work it through. We're running a little bit late. We're 1/4 after, and I figure an hour and a half is usually pushing our luck. Bruce Burgess, I see that hand.
I want to know if this is limited to for sale only. Would there be an opportunity to express wants?
No, exactly, Bruce. That's what I hope people will do. I mean, some of our quieter people go around a show looking for something forever. If you've got something that you can collect, RCATs, then say, I'm looking for these. Here's my phone number. Tell me if you got one,
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
You don't have to take up 5 minutes. You can,
Okay, we're running. Go ahead, Paul.
I'll be quick. So I'll tie in my show and tell with a little Nevik business as well. So I had a couple of email exchanges. You may have seen Ted Neff's plea for donor radios for his raffle activities when we do eventually all get back together. So Ted usually collects some sets that will be presented as raffle items. So I mentioned to him I would express to the group, if you know somebody who has a lot of sets, who you think has too many, who could spare one and would like to bring it in. And my wife is saying in the kitchen, yes, that's you. I get it. So I get the message. But just, if you have a friend, you think they have a lot, you have something yourself, please let them know. Ted needs some donations. And the other thing I would mention, as I had this conversation with Ted, for some people who come to the shows who we have many levels of collectors and attendees. You know, we have some people who are looking for, you know, the holy grail of radios. We have other folks who come as a casual observer, or they find out about the show and they're just interested in seeing what it's all about. For the neophyte or the new attender, nice, attractive, shiny, simple set, like an RCA 15X 6 tube, so you get a little better performance there. You get some sensitivity, but it looks nice. It's something that they can bring home, and somebody isn't going to say, what's that piece of junk? You know, it's not a restoration project, but it's safe to play if it's had some work. For us, these are, you know, more of a pedestrian set that we might say, well, I could certainly spare something like that for my collection. So for that type of person, you know, the donor set doesn't have to be a very advanced project or something that you put a lot of time and effort in that you hate to part with. It could be something to just make somebody happy and maybe make them come back to an event or to help generate their interest. So to go along with that, I'd just like your opinion on this. Sometimes you're lucky, and I found a great ad for that very same set, and I'm getting a lot of glare off it, but I'll try to get you a shot on it. It's on a green mat. The ad itself is on a green background. It has sort of an old school type look to it. So just a little piece of something to go with the radio that we had done. It adds a nice flavor. And if you're trying to make a presentable little display in your house, if it's just piles of electronics, sometimes you get dirty looks. But if you can actually make it look a little bit more like a presentation that you might put in the library, or I know we've done some stuff up at Peabody, Essex. If you have an ad piece that goes with the radio, it adds a lot of pizzazz, and it does attract eyes too. So if you ever do a table, it's nice to get that attention. Or if we're ever in a position where we do some outreach, or we're asked to provide some sets for some background, keep your eyes out for those types of advertising pieces. You go to flea markets, you know, junk shops. I always look in the magazines. You never know what you'll find. Buy some of the cheap magazines and you'll get a great piece that looks super when framed.
You raised a really nice point there, Paul. I think that it's important to realize that not everybody knows what they're looking at a show, and occasionally we have to tell a person what they're looking at.
Exactly.
And this
You
is
get a set
really,
like that with an on-off knob and a tuning dial and a high-low tone, and they're very happy.
This is a really nice
sounding set.
This is a nice format for telling people what it is that you are presenting them with. Gary, I see you up there. Did you want to say something, Gary? Your microphone's muted at the moment. Okay, John, you've been waving your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick show and tell, because John had shown a radio, a German radio. This is a Blaupunk portable called the Derby. Has 4 bands. Looks like a car radio.
Yeah.
Has the antenna. Now the handle needs to be reattached on this side.
Yeah.
But this also came with a slide attachment where you could slide it into a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
And now the people I got it from have there's some wires on the bottom. I don't know what they were doing with it, but I just wanted to show it. It works, I believe, on 6D batteries, maybe, that fit into this thing. I've tried to play it once when I first got it. It's from about 1961 or so. They made this for many years, many different versions. And as I said, 4 different bands. It looked like FM, AM, probably long wave or whatever they had over there. But it's a interesting little thing. I have the original paperwork for it also. That's my quick show and tell. The other thing I want to mention is someone mentioned Audio Karma as a website for audio stuff. 2 other websites. One is hifiengine.com, which is for basic electronics and the audio, and vinylengine.com. They're sister websites or brother websites. Vinyl Engine deals with, they both have hundreds of manuals, service manuals and operation manuals for audio equipment. And also, if you're a Fisher aficionado, fisherconsoles.com has all the Fisher consoles, as well as hundreds of manuals for regular Fisher separate equipment. And it's all free downloading. You don't have to register for that site. For Vinyl Engine and Hi-Fi Engine, you just have to register. It costs nothing. And that's all I had to say.
Thanks,
That's
John. Again, we're running late. Why don't you just put up your hand if you would like to add something? We have about 10 minutes left. Go ahead, Bruce. Bruce
I'll
Phillips.
just take 1 minute. This is for John and John. See if I can hold this up. This is that Blau
Nice.
Derby with the car attachment for it. This came
Oh, I
out of
love
a
it.
guy's-
It's a US.
This guy came out of a guy's 61 Porsche. So he
Nice.
loved this
Oh,
thing.
wow, that's cool. That's cool.
It's got all the original documentation with it and everything. But you got
That is
here to
cool.
pull it out and everything that went with it. So quick
Oh,
one
I-
there. I'll do one more for the other, Mr. Nowasaki. This is the RCA version of that player that he showed.
Oh.
Hey, Bruce, I have one of those too.
Yep. This Lafayette sold this in, I think, '59 for an astounding $675. And this one's still in its original box here.
Wow. Yeah, I've got one of those RCAs. I just thought that the child's version, I thought
Well, I
was an
like the
interesting
child
thing.
version because it's got the amp and everything in it. These all had to plug into a radio, you know?
Right.
Can I show one last thing? It's not a radio, but it's something I just picked up. A Big Bang Canon.
Do you have the bang side to go with it?
Yeah. I do have a tube of that.
Yeah.
Oh, gee. It's all over the place now. But I'm trying to get this right. The Canon's in there. It's a mess. I just got it the other day, and the bang sight powder is all over the place right now. So.
Calcium chloride, when you mix it with water, it becomes a acetylene gas. And when you mix that with air, it makes a heck of a good bang. Roy, you've been very patient. I saw your hand up. Go for it, please.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you click on speaker view, I don't know if most of you know this, but if you click on speaker view, whoever's talking, you're going to get to see the item that they're holding up a little bit better. Well, I'm a fairly new member. I've been in this club for 2 years, but I was able to make it when it was still New York the last year. At the most recent show, I picked up a nice pair of Tandberg speakers that I have hooked up in my living room to a Sansui 7070 receiver that I picked up at a previous show. But one of my prized possessions right now is from this radio right here. It's actually from
Nice.
And we had a collection that has the Match Guy tube. It's their line model 62317. So it works nice. So
It's a beautiful dial.
thank you.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So that's it.
That came from the Bintliff collection, right?
Yes, it did. That was one of the main reasons I bought it. I never met him, but I saw the email thread on, and then I tried to research a little bit about him and read some of the stuff that he had, did on the radio industry, and I thought it would be a nice piece to have. So
Thank you, Joe, Roy. That's neat. Joe Devons, you've been very patient. I saw your hand there. Go for it.
Thank you. You brought up a question a little while ago about the number of participants, being limited to 100. I was on a group about 3 weeks ago, and we had 60 in there, actually 63, and it went fine. There were no issues with that. Earlier in the week, I had brought up sent an email out on the group about a collection that I've been working with a gentleman with, and I talked to Bruce a couple of nights ago about it. I don't know if he's had any time or been able to connect with the fellow about the collection. Well, what I'd like to know is, I don't want to monopolize the fest at all with this collection, but could I send out a list some way to let everybody know what's there. You know, I sent out a link to what the pictures are of them, but you can't always tell what they are. So if I sent out a list, how would we work that? Could we do it a couple of days in advance? Would you want me to have some pictures together for some of these, just so it doesn't take up a lot of time, at least for my part of it? I think, oh, and the other was, you know, Bruce had mentioned about running for positions with the club. And I've already decided that I'll re-up as director for the club, but and I'll stay on as one of the editors. That's it.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. And that's an awfully big list for this Zoom Fest. So my thought is that it would be better to do it on the Reflector and on Bruce Phillips's big list. Send that out as an email thing rather than trying to do much to include it into the Zoom Fest. But I'll listen to what anyone else has to say on that.
My thought, John, is, sorry, Joe, is that, you know, you've got the link out there already on our IO group. I think if you take a couple minutes on the fest we have and say, hey, there's a guy up in Waldoboro, Maine, he's got a lot of radios, he's looking to move them, you can see the list here, you might be able to show a couple of the pictures in a short period of time. I think that's all you can do for him, honestly, Joe. I will be up there Saturday. I promised I'd come up and take a look. I'll make him an offer on the tubes and the tube testers, but the radios and things, I think, you know, I don't have any interest in at this point. So I'll talk to him a little bit more about that. I'll tell him that you're looking to put out some more publicity for him, and we'll see what we can do for him.
Bruce,
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
Bruce, this is Carl Nord. If you're going to go up there, if you could bring or just give me any quick overview of what is in that 6-foot rack that he's got. It looks like a couple of power supplies and maybe some commercial AM or FM radio.
Okay.
I'm rather intrigued about that, and I don't live that far away.
Okay, I'll take a couple of pictures for you, Carl.
Yeah, you don't even need to do that. I saw the pictures that Joe had. I'm just curious what's in the bottom of it.
Yeah, and Carl, if you need help, you know, moving it, you know, just give me a holler and we'll work things out. At some point, I do want to get in there and see what's in there myself. He had that one Hammerland in there that I had an interest in.
Okay. Everybody, go ahead, Carl.
No, I just said very good, and Joe, good to see you.
Dave here.
Larry, do you want to say anything? It's getting kind of late. I'm sorry to have started late and all that. Anything from you?
Just a couple comments, Tom. First of all, enjoyed David Kruh's presentation there. And if that looked familiar to you, we had David's article on that subject a couple issues ago in Raven. Same radio, in same subject with replacements for the series dropping resistance line cord. So if you like the presentation, go back and look at, it wasn't the last Raven that we just published. I think it might have been the one before that, possibly the one before that, but no further back than that. The other thing I wanted to say is two things. One, on the Zoom Fest, I don't think you have to limit the number of items. I think if you limit the time to 5 minutes a person, you know, if somebody can cram in as many items as they want, that's up to them in 5 minutes. But, you know, the gong goes off in 5 minutes, right? So leave it to what they think will be most effective for each seller or
Nope, I'm with you, Larry.
Or buyer. Yep. Yeah, I think you made that suggestion initially, Bruce, and I thought that was the way to go.
Makes sense.
It might even be a good idea if you do have a larger number of items to maybe take some nice pictures of them and put together a little slide presentation so you could just click through instead of having to spend time going in and out of view as you go pick something up and fumble around with it. If you could say, and I have this one, and I have this one, and I have this one, you know, contact me offline if you want a in-person demonstration or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, let me just check around. Howard, Mariotti, do you want to say anything?
No, I'm sorry I joined late. I wanted to see if I could get this from work. I'm actually at work. This is my cubicle. And that's why my email address says FLNA, Frito-Lay North America across it. But I wanted to just check in because I had heard about this. I knew what was going on. And I'm really happy to see the whole thing going. Maybe I can share one thing, or I can just try to. This was the last time I was with Ray Bintliff. Can you see that?
Oh, yes, great.
He said I could take a selfie with him. But anyway, that's the one thing I wanted to share. That was when I interviewed him last September. So, I think the meeting's great, and I'm glad I was able to at least get in on this back half and see what everyone's doing. So thank you, guys.
That's great, Howard. Thank you. And Bob Harris, we've left you out. Do you want to say anything tonight?
No, I'm good. Thanks. I'll plan to share something next week. I know we're kind of short on time. I wanted to thank David for the presentation. It was great. And I hope we'll hear his other three. Thanks.
Okay. Then I think we've covered everybody.
Tom, before you stop, Tom, quick one. Two quick things to Howard while I got him right there. Number one, Howard, do you have any problem with us trying to pull a Zoom Fest, in 2 weeks when we would have had the normal Brookline?
Not at all, and I apologize, Bruce, for not getting back to you. Here at work, because several people got infected, there were absences, and I've been working a lot, and that one slipped through. So no problem there. I think you all have good ideas. I like the idea of utilizing the I/O groups to, let's say, upload an album of pictures. But definitely, yes, I have no problems with it.
Yeah, the other quick one, Howard, that's good. So we'll take care of it because the other one that might interest you, this morning on Good Morning America, there was a commercial for Frito-Lay, and I really enjoyed that commercial. I don't know if you've seen it, but basically it said, hey, everybody's bitching about how we don't have enough of this and we don't have enough of that, but our workers are working overtime to bring you our product. And I'm thinking, why don't they show me a picture of Howard here? Get it over with. So that's all I got to say. We can shut down now. Thank you.
Did you know
thank you,
hi to the group?
That's great. Thank you all. Gary, did you want to say something? I don't know if we've heard from you over there.
Yeah, sorry. When you tried to get me to talk before, I fumbled at the unmute button. And if you have a minute, I'll be quick. This is what I was working on today. It died, and what this is it's a Ten-Tech receiver, an RX 325. It's vintage, mid 1980s, and it was dead. All that would turn on, it used to work. All that would turn on was a light in the meter. And what I did, what fixed it was. I thought it was like a bad contact between like a wire connector going into a circuit board because the set's full of them. But I tried, because I had experience in the past with this issue on another radio. It's either the chip is either the CPU chip or the chip that had the operating program in it. I was making bad contact in the socket. I lifted it up on one end with a flat blade screwdriver, just a little, and pushed it back in, lifted it up on the other end and pushed it back in. I didn't remove it completely. You could do that, but then there's always the danger of bending a pin or breaking a pin trying to get it back in. So I try to avoid that. But that got it going again. And so it was very easy. I thought it was, the circuit boards are full of connectors with wires and plugs going to it. I was sure it was one of them. But this set is mid 80s. That would make it like about 35 years ago. and made then, it's not old now. I had this issue on a
Zoom shuts you
10 tech rig
down.
with, in the mid 2000s. It was the 10 techs, they called it the 6 and 2. It was a 6 meter and 2 meter all mode VHF rig that they had. And that radio at that time had the same problem. I had to pull the CPU chip out and put it back in. And that cured it. But that radio was like 5 years old at the time, and that was having the issue. I guess this could be forgiven for having it at 35 years old. This is back in the day when they to program the chip, you couldn't do it over the internet. You had to take the chip out, send it off, go to have someone with a programmer device program it, and then take the chip and put it back in. So anyway, that's it. I took longer than I had intended to.
Hey, Gary?
Go ahead, Carl. Go ahead, Carl.
You should know that your CE20 is alive and well on 160 and 75. It's worked. Ron got it up and going.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you. Did he have to do a lot of work to it, or was it fairly simple?
I understood it was complete tear down and rebuild. No, I think he just replaced filter caps.
Oh, okay. Because I've had that for years, and I don't think I've even ever turned it on.
Well, I know at least Larry has heard it on here.
Absolutely. He's got an outstanding signal into Maine from Connecticut with only 12 watts with that rig. And I run one of them here too, but mine, shall we say, has been more than slightly modified.
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad you guys told me that. I'd love to hear him on the air sometime.
Okay, everybody, I think that it has come time to quit. One question is, would you like to do this again next week on Thursday? Is that okay with everybody? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
A quick one, Tom.
Also,
Can we plan on the next 2 Thursdays? Because I would tell people that are going to attempt Zoom Fest to attempt to come into this meeting before they attempt to just come into Zoom Fest in that morning. That's all.
Okay, I will
We think
do
we're
it
good
if
for
Dick,
2 weeks.
I will be happy to do it if Dick doesn't do it. I'd like to also welcome Arnold Olean, who is a very dear friend of mine, undoubtedly going to join the club, but we've been friends for a very long time, and he's often at the Near Fest. We have a good time. Some of you may know him. In any event, thank you all for a really fun meeting, and especially that presentation was fantastic. And I look forward to next Thursday, and it'll either be Joe, Dick, or myself who will open the meeting. And I would love to have someone be master of ceremonies, since I'm a little shaky on this, but with the screenshot, I can know everybody's name. I can make a list of that and at least run down that. It won't be constantly changing on the right side here. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
good night.
Tom.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks a lot, Tom, and everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
For that screen.